2,000 years ago, the greatest tragedy in the history of the universe took place outside the city walls of Jerusalem. There at the foot of the hill Golgotha, our Lord Jesus Christ was crucified. Tragedy turned to triumph 3 days later, when by the mighty power of God he was raised from the dead. Jesus' death was not mere happenstance. In 1 Peter, the 2nd chapter, verses 19 and 20, we read of him that he was the Lamb slain from before the foundation of the world. Speaking with his disciples on the Mount of Olives, Jesus gave us his wonderful prophecy recorded in the 24th chapter of Matthew. There he foretold of Israel's restoration in the parable of the fig tree. The restoration of the nation of Israel would mark the end of the age. Israel is, therefore, God's time clock. Trace with us the remarkable fulfillment of Bible prophecy as we examine those things foretold by the Hebrew prophets as related to the restoration of the nation of Israel.
There is none else. There is no God beside me. I form the light and create darkness. I, even my hands, have stretched out the heavens. I have made the earth and created man upon it. When I divided to the nations their inheritance, when I separated the sons of Adam, I set the bounds of the nations according to the number of the children of Israel. For Israel is my portion. Israel is my inheritance. I am the God of Israel. I have formed thee, O Israel. Thou shalt not be forgotten of me. I, the Lord, shall preserve thy going out and thy coming in from this time forth and even forevermore.
Over 4,000 years ago, Israel's destiny was fixed when God appeared to Father Abraham, saying, "Get thee out of thy country, and from thy kindred, and from thy father's house, unto the land that I will show thee. And I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee, and make thy name great. In thee shall all the families of the earth be blessed." This promise was to be so important that God did something he never did again. He confirmed it by an oath when Abraham offered up his son. "In blessing I will bless thee, and thy seed shall possess the gate of his enemies. And in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed." Notice the promise has two parts. First, the seed of Abraham is to possess the land forever. And secondly, Israel, as part of Abraham's seed, is to bless all other nations. What a destiny, fixed by divine will. Israel is to possess the land of Canaan forever, and ultimately will be a blesser nation to all other nations in God's kingdom. 400 years after God's promise was made, Moses delivered Abraham's descendants from Egyptian slavery. Then, at Mount Sinai, God gave his Torah to his people, Israel. Under Joshua, Israel secured some of the promised land. Their national glory reached its zenith during the reigns of David and Solomon. But the great deflection from divine law during Solomon's reign caused the Lord to divide the nation. For 400 years, Judah waned until the destruction of Jerusalem. Although the Babylonian captivity came to an end, Judah remained a vassal state. Yet there were spurts of glory. Although the first temple was destroyed, there was the joy of the second. Esther saved her people, and Purim was born. Judas Maccabeus defied military logic, and Israel was free for about 100 years. Again provoked by cruel exploitation and armed with little more than a fierce independence, Israel found itself in open revolt against Rome, the iron-fisted masters of the world. Jerusalem was taken, the Second Temple destroyed. Notwithstanding the heroics of Masada and the Bar Kokhba revolt, the great dispersion to the ends of the earth began. Then, under the terrors of Christendom, the Jewish people left a footprint of blood in every nation. As Christians, Bible students are appalled at these centuries of bloodletting. This was not true Christianity, but the inevitable corruptions of a church-state system. Christendom was looking for a scapegoat to cover its own ills. Many rabbis use Hosea 3 verses 4 and 5 to explain Israel's adversity since the destruction of the temple. For the children of Israel shall sit solitary many days without king, and without prince, and without sacrifice, and without pillar, and without ephod or teraphim. Afterward shall the children of Israel return, and seek the Lord their God, and David their king, and shall come trembling unto the Lord and to his goodness in the end of days. Bible students have keenly felt the commission of Isaiah 40, verses 1 and 2. Comfort ye. Comfort ye my people, saith your God. Bid Jerusalem take heart, and proclaim unto her that she has received of the Lord's hand double for all her sins. Israel was to be especially encouraged and comforted when her double ended. What is this double or duplicate portion? Israel's history covers 2 periods of time. Israel was to experience a double or duplicate period of disfavor, equal to her period of favor. The time prophecies of the double showed Israel's period of national disfavor ended in 1878. In that very year, the Berlin Congress of Nations was held. Benjamin Disraeli, the first and only British Prime Minister of Jewish lineage, was there. By Disraeli's maneuvering, England was given a protectorate over Turkey's Middle East provinces, including Palestine. Centuries-old restrictions on Jews to buy land and settle were eased. The time to favor Zion had indeed come, for Israel has an appointment with destiny. Even before 1878, Bible students predicted this date would mark the beginning of national favor returning to Israel. David Ben-Gurion's speech on Israel's 10th anniversary confirmed this prediction.
The state did not come into existence on that great day of May 14, 1948. Nor was it the 650,000 Jews who lived in the country on that great day who established it. Pioneering activities of 3 generations preceded the Declaration of Independence, beginning in 1878, when the first Hebrew settlement in the country, Petah Tikva, was founded.
Petah Tikva, the first Jewish colony for Aliyah, means door of hope. For years thereafter, many new Olim, like the young Ben-Gurion, were trained in Petah Tikva. Sitting on the hillside together at night, they would sing Hatikva and dream of re-establishing the Jewish state. (1878) marked God's favor for Aliyah. 1914 marked the beginning of the end of Gentile dominion over Eretz Israel. After 1914, Bible students encouraged their Jewish friends to go up and take possession of the land. For they had an appointment with destiny. In Ezekiel 37, a dramatic prophecy of Israel's restoration is given. Ezekiel is shown a valley filled with dry bones. These bones are identified in verse 11 as Israel's hopeless condition as a nation.
Although alive as a people, national poverty had been dead for centuries. But in 1878, the bones began to come together. World War I resulted in the Balfour Declaration, and sinew began to cover the bones, then flesh and skin. In 1948, the miracle occurred and the body of national poverty emerged. Israel was a nation again. Why? Remember that the promise to Abraham contained two parts. First, Israel was to possess the land forever. And second, Israel was to be a blessing to all other nations. In 1948, Israel met its first appointment with divine destiny. Israel will never be destroyed. It is now marching toward its second appointment with divine destiny, the blessing of all nations in the Messianic age.
The new Israeli state is a miracle of history. Never before has a nation been destroyed, its people dispersed to the ends of the earth, and then, nearly 2,000 years later, regathered to their homeland and re-established as a nation. On May 14, 1948, Israel declared itself an independent state. Another miracle occurred. The armies of 7 Arab nations marched on the newborn state, boasting that they would push the Jews into the sea. Outnumbered 100 to 1, Israel not only repelled the invaders, but acquired more of Palestine than was granted in the United Nations partition plan. During this war, Jordan had seized the biblical Jerusalem. Therefore, Israel declared the new city of Jerusalem as its capital. But deep in their hearts, they knew that the real Jerusalem was occupied by Jordan. Nevertheless, it was apparent that God was dealing once again with Israel as a nation. Many predictions of the Hebrew prophets relating to Israel's regathering since 1878 are being fulfilled. And the Lord said, "Behold, I will bring them from the north country, and gather them from the coasts of the earth, and with them the blind and the lame, the woman with child, and her that travaileth with child together. A great company shall return thither." The law of return declared that any Jew, anywhere, could return. In fulfillment of Jeremiah 31:8, all, both maimed and whole, were welcome to the shores of Israel. There have been some very unique aliyot. The most colorful was Operation Magic Carpet. The Yemenite Jews lived in a very ancient culture. Many had never seen an airplane, and concern arose that they might not enter one. They arrived at the airport, and when told to board the planes, rushed forward without hesitation. Why? They recalled the scripture that they were to return to the promised land on the wings of an eagle.
Jews from India, Ethiopia, Russia, and others from the four corners of the earth have been regathered. Jeremiah 16:16 foretold the conditions that would result in Aliyah. Verses 14 and 15 speak of the regathering from all nations. Then verse 16 says, "Behold, I will send for many fishers, saith the Lord, and they shall fish them. And after will I send for many hunters, and they shall hunt them."
The fishers were the Zionist movement. As a fisherman uses bait, so the Zionist movement used the idealism of a national homeland to inspire Jews to return to the land of their fathers. God raised Theodor Herzl, who founded the modern Zionist movement in 1897. In his book, Herzl portrayed the idealism of a Jewish state.
The promised land, where we can have hooked noses, black or red beards and bow legs, without being despised for it, where we can live at last as free men on our own soil, and where we can die peacefully in our own fatherland. There we can expect the rewards of honor for great deeds, so that the offensive cry of Jew may become an honorable appellation like German, Englishman, Frenchman, in brief, like all civilized people, so that we may be able to form our own state, to educate our people for the task which at present still lie before our own vision. For surely God would not have kept us alive so long if there were not assigned to us a specific role in the history of mankind.
Hunters, as well as fishers, are mentioned in Jeremiah 16:16. Divine foreknowledge knew the anti-Semitism of the Gentile heart. Persecutors like the Nazis literally drove the Jews out of the nations. Yad Vashem was erected that the new generations of Jews would never forget the Holocaust and never permit it to happen again. In the Memorial Hall, an eternal flame burns as a symbol that the Jewish people will never be extinguished. The floor is composed of 6 million tiles, one for each Jew slaughtered. The name of each death camp is also memorialized in shame. All the school children in Israel are bused to Yad Vashem to learn a bitter fact of history, that in times of crisis, the Jew is often turned upon as a scapegoat and becomes the victim of pent-up hate and scorn. How cruel, yet how true. The Holocaust is an indictment of so-called Christian Europe. Both Catholic and Protestant sociologists observed that the Nazi extermination of 6 million Jews was impossible without the active cooperation of the public. The suppressed Gentile anti-Semitism surfaced in that atmosphere of self-preservation, and thousands of professed Christians turned informant or cooperated in numerous other ways. By 1942, the Allied powers, the so-called Christian West, were aware of the genocide, but refused to bomb the railroads leading to the death camps. Christendom was revealed for what it had become, a hollow shell of professions. Yet in that dark night of hate, there were a few lights of love, memorialized in the Garden of the Righteous of the Gentiles at Yad Vashem. Each tree honors specific Gentile individuals or families that risked life itself to save the Jews from the The Gentile world, after reneging on their promise since 1917, and now guilt-ridden, finally felt a moral obligation to grant the Jews an independent state. Jeremiah prophesied that returning Jews would first have to buy the land. Between 1878 and 1948, millions of dollars were raised through worldwide fund drives to purchase land for settlement. Over 90% of the land purchased was barren waste, for which exorbitant prices were paid to a small class of wealthy Muslim landowners. In 1905, Dr. Abraham Kuyper, Prime Minister of the Netherlands, wrote of his trip to Palestine. Quote, "The Jews have come in vain. Only God can check the blight of the inrushing desert. Only a miracle can save the Holy Land." Unquote. The reclamation of the land to the fertility of old is a miraculous fulfillment of the Hebrew prophets. "And they shall build the waste cities and inhabit them, and they shall plant vineyards and drink the wine thereof. They shall also make gardens and eat the fruit of them." Israel is a land of cities built upon the desert. In 1910, upon barren sand, the city of Tel Aviv was founded. Its mayor was elected before ground was broken. It is now one of the largest and most beautiful cities in Israel. Well did the prophet say, "They shall build the waste cities and inhabit them." In addition to barren desert, vast malaria-infested swamps defied all reclamation efforts by wealthy Arab landowners. The Jews then bought the land and fought and finally won the battle of reclaiming the malarial swamps, but at great price. Henrietta Sold, founder of Hadassah, wrote in 1920,
"It is not I who am ill, but nearly everybody around me. Malaria is a terrible plague. All the stones of this country, and heaven knows there are plenty of them, appear to cry out in pain. The immigrants, who are arriving at the rate of 300 a week, contracted in the first 8 days. They go into the country to work and soon return, asking to be admitted to hospitals that don't exist. Every day we are turning away sick people with temperatures of 102. Even if we had all the gold in the world, we could not prevent these first immigrants from becoming fertilizer for the land. Our task requires the sacrifice of young lives. It is a struggle with nature. I still believe it is worth the while, but it is hard, very hard."
The worst swamps to be conquered became the most fertile parts of all the land. Fish ponds are nestled within beautiful farmland. Exporting fish has become a major industry. Citrus fruits, wheat, avocados, and vegetables of every kind are grown on ground made fertile by the sacrifices of many Jewish lives. Where there is water, there is life. After the capture of Mount Hermon and the Golan Heights in the '67 war, Israel found itself in the skiing business. Beginning with the snows of Mount Hermon, Israel has one of the most extensive irrigation systems of any nation. From melting snow and rains, water collects in the foothills. Through various tributaries, the waters of Mount Hermon funnel into the Jordan River. the Jordan has descended an elevation of over 900 feet, the muddied river flows into the sweet, crystal-clear waters of the Sea of Galilee, also called the Sea of Gennesaret. After traveling 12 miles through the purifying sea, the Jordan exits the fresh, living water for a dead and thirsty land. Is it any wonder the rabbis say, Adonai has created 7 seas, but the Sea of Gennesaret is his delight. Upon leaving the Galilee, the Jordan pursues a winding course all along which its waters are diverted through pumping stations, pipes, aqueducts, and ditches to bring life to the parched land. After a journey of over 200 miles, some of the water from the snows of Mount Hermon flows into this reservoir to create fertile farmland for a kibbutz near Beersheba. Where there is water, there is life. Fulfillment of Bible prophecy, the land from north to south is returning to its ancient fertility. The greatest miscalculation President Nasser of Egypt ever made was his demand that the United Nations remove its peacekeeping force in the Sinai. This inevitably touched off the '67 war. Although outnumbered, the Israeli army overran the combined forces of Egypt, Syria, and Jordan in 6 short days. In fulfillment of Bible prophecy, the Sinai, the Golan Heights, the West Bank, and Old Jerusalem became Israeli territory, one of the greatest military feats in history. The old city of Jerusalem was taken in fulfillment of Zechariah's prophecy. Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling unto all the people round about, when they shall be in the siege both against Judah and Jerusalem. And in that day I will make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all people. All that burden themselves with it shall be cut in pieces, though all the people of the earth be gathered together against it. Jerusalem is a problem to 2 groups. Verse 2 identifies the people round about Israel, Arab nations. Verse 3 states that the city is also a burdensome stone to all the people of the earth. Verse 6 reveals that as a result of war with the Arabs, the people round about, Jerusalem shall inhabit its own place. Even in Jerusalem, a unique phrase. What does it mean? In 1948, when Jordan took the old city, Israel declared the new city of Jerusalem as its capital. But in their hearts, the Israelis knew the Bible Jerusalem was in the hands of the Arabs. When Jordan entered the 67 war, the Israelis attacked Old Jerusalem with a religious fervor. With the capture of the Old City, Jerusalem, Israel's capital, now occupied its own place, even in the biblical city of Jerusalem, a remarkable fulfillment of Zechariah's prophecy. Not only were Jews denied access to their holy places during Jordanian occupation, the holy places were deliberately desecrated. Sacred stones were used for walkways. Since the 67 victory, a Muslim holy place has never been desecrated by Israel. Both Arabs and Christians have access to their holy places. Between 1948 and 1967, Jordan had systematically destroyed the Old City's Jewish quarter, leveling synagogues and eliminating evidence of Jerusalem's Jewish character. Since 1967, the Israeli government embarked on an ambitious building program. The old synagogues have been rebuilt. The largest, Hervah, was left in ruins, this arch being built as a memorial to another of the endless list of indignities suffered in the Jewish quarter. Now, with the old city once again in Israeli hands, such indignities have been brought to an end. The restored Jewish quarter is sufficient testimony that Jerusalem could never be surrendered after the remarkable recapture of Israel's true capital in the 67 war. Jerusalem means city of peace, yet few cities have experienced more wars than Jerusalem in its 4,000 years. Still a center of controversy, the Bible reveals that Jerusalem will soon become the city of eternal peace, the capital of God's kingdom, which will bring peace and righteousness to the whole earth. One senses the presence of those prophets who, centuries before, walked the streets of Jerusalem. History surrounds you. David's shaft, through which his army entered Jerusalem unawares and captured it. King Hezekiah's tunnel, constructed over 27 centuries ago. Archaeological digs yield thrilling finds. The stairs and paved streets that led to the Second Temple. The divine name on a silver amulet dating back to the days of the First Temple. Babylonian arrowheads next to the remains of an Israeli defense tower. The first evidence of the siege and destruction of First Temple Jerusalem. Further excitement is felt at the discovery of the actual foundation stones of both the First and Second Temples. Who can doubt Jewish antiquity in Jerusalem? Who can doubt Israel's right to Jerusalem? Further, this is the holy city of the Jews, as is pointedly reflected at the Western Wall, part of the Temple Mount. For centuries, this was the center of Jewish worship, especially during the periods of the First and Second Temples. Is it any wonder that the Jews throng here to pray, the same place at which their ancestors had worshipped for nearly 3,000 years? But how holy is Jerusalem to the Arabs? When Arabs worship in the Mosque of Omar, they face this niche, for this niche faces Mecca in Saudi Arabia. The Arabs in Jerusalem face towards Saudi Arabia to pray. The Arabian center of worship is Mecca, not Jerusalem. To the Jews, Jerusalem always was and ever will be the center of their worship. Western powers insist that Jerusalem is negotiable in any Israeli-Arab peace talks. Jerusalem is not negotiable. Archaeology and history confirm Jerusalem is in the hands of its rightful owners. Remember Zechariah's prophecy. All nations who involve themselves in the Jerusalem issue will be sorely wounded. The nations of the world had better heed this warning. The Israelis are determined that their state will never be destroyed again. Masada was symbolic of the destruction of the Second Commonwealth. Its defenders are glorious heroes of Jewish history. At night, in awe-inspiring ceremonies on the slopes of Masada, new Israeli Defense Force recruits take the solemn oath, Masada shall not fall again. They have kept their oath. The IDF has fought 5 brilliant wars and emerged from the Lebanese War, rated the 4th strongest military force in the world. But the Jewish people are weary of war. Israel wants peace. Camp David proved that Israel is willing to sacrifice much for peace. They gave Egypt the whole Sinai. This made their southern border very militarily vulnerable. But they were willing to take this chance for peace. They gave Egypt the Sinai oil wells, which had supplied 75% of their energy needs. This played havoc on their economy, but it was a price they were willing to pay for peace. And still the world asks Israel to give more. Israel asks, what have the Arabs given for peace? Many applaud the 1993 peace accord between the PLO and Israel as a positive gesture toward peace, but have deep apprehensions that it may be a strategy by the Arabs to gain a foothold in Israel from which to launch a future assault. Arab military sophistication is on the increase. Seemingly time is on their side, and despite the existence of so-called moderate Arabs, many still feel that the Arabs are intent on the destruction of the Jewish state. History has shown that world opinion toward Israel is, at best, fickle, and this raises the question of how long the United States will continue military and financial support. Can Israel survive the overwhelming long-term problems facing her?
The Jewish people was ordered by God to settle in the land, while for other people there is no specific religious duty to live in a certain land. But another point that is interesting is that while the reality of the Jewish people is a known fact, the idea of a Palestinian people is something that was creating recently for political reasons. We easily admit the existence of an Arab people, but claiming that those Arabs who live inside the Israeli territory are Palestinians and that they form a specific nationality is something that has no ethnic or historic basis, but is just based on recent politics. Even in my opinion, Arabs have the right to live in Israel, but of course, just like in every case, a Muslim must abide by the local law. So Arabs can have a right to live in Israel as long as they abide by the Israeli law, just like it happens to Arabs and Muslims who live in whatever part of the world.
Many are praying for the peace of Jerusalem. And the Hebrew prophets assure us that peace most favorable to the nation of Israel will come. Nevertheless, daunting problems face her, not the least of which is the division of the city of Jerusalem. The prophet Isaiah and the prophet Zephaniah tell us of a future Arab-Israeli conflict in which the nation of Israel, by divine providence, will gain the victory. In that victory, Israel will finally acquire all the territories of the West Bank, Gaza, parts of Lebanon, and the nation of Jordan. As a result of acquiring these new territories, we expect large-scale immigration of Jews to Israel from the United States, the former Soviet republics, and South America. This influx of population will stabilize the nation of Israel as truly a Jewish state. Notwithstanding her problems, the nation of Israel continues to enjoy the blessing of divine providence. By supporting her, we support the work of God. It's no coincidence that the restoration of the nation of Israel occurs during a time of great upheaval. Social, political, international, financial upheaval. This was prophesied by the prophet Daniel in chapter 12 as a time of troubles such as was not since there was a nation, no, nor ever shall be. Arnold Toynbee, the dean of modern historians, picked up this biblical phrase, a time of troubles, and used it in his writings to describe our time as a time of unprecedented worldwide troubles. The prophet Ezekiel in chapters 38 and 39 foretells of the invasion of Israel by the hosts of Gog. Divine might will overrule on their behalf and deliver the nation of Israel out of the hand of their enemy. Then Israel, a humbled and redeemed people, will fulfill their role in God's plan. The 1,000-year kingdom of Christ will be made manifest in the earth. The law will go forth from Zion, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. God's kingdom will assure equity and justice to all. The psalmist says, He will defend the cause of the poor, deliver the needy, and crush the oppressor. Our history is one of bloody war, but in the Messianic age they shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war any more. They shall not hurt nor destroy in all my holy mountain or kingdom, for the earth shall be full of the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. Think of the parched drought belt of Africa, where millions have starved to death in recent years. The climatic conditions of the kingdom will cause the earth to bring forth in abundance. There will be no sickness, no crippling diseases, no cancer, diabetes, heart failure. The blind will see, the deaf hear, the crippled walk. God has not been trying to convert the world before the return of Christ. Acts chapter 15 reveals that God for the first time did visit the Gentiles to take out of them a people for His name, not to convert all. And to this agree the words of the prophets, as it is written, After this I will return, the second advent, and build again the tabernacle of David, the kingdom of God that will extend from Israel to the ends of the earth, that the residue, the remainder of men, might seek after the Lord. The people for His name is the church. These will be the bride of Christ, who John, the Revelator, informs us will reign with Christ in His 1,000-year kingdom. The Spirit, the bridegroom, and the bride say, Come. And let him that heareth say, Come. And let him that is athirst come. And whosoever will, let him take the water of life freely.
In those days it shall come to pass that 10 men shall take hold out of all the languages of the nations, shall even take hold of the skirt of him that is a Jew, saying, We will go with you, for we have heard that God is with you. At that time they shall call Jerusalem the throne of the Lord, and all the nations shall be gathered unto it, to the name of the Lord, to Jerusalem. Neither shall they walk any more after the stubbornness of their evil heart. And Jerusalem shall be called the city of truth, and the mountain of the Lord of hosts, the holy mountain.
The Torah will go forth from Jerusalem. The Gentiles will come to thy light.